This is Jason Lightoller from Woodside, and this evening I'm going to show you how to reduce the size of a jumper. Depending on what side of the pond you're on, you may know this as a sweater. Now this is a jumper that I made about 18 months ago now, and it fitted me perfectly. However, somebody else did the ironing and unfortunately they ruined it. They've put it under a hot iron and they've given it several very sharp blasts of pressurized steam, and of course that's killed the yarn. This is just basic acrylic yarn here, and it needs to be fixed because I've tried everything else to fix this. I've put it in the tumble dryer to try and shrink it, but it just hasn't worked. So this is now about 4 sizes too large for me. I can't even get it in the frame of the camera, it's that big. So we're going to reduce the width of this. It needs to be shortened, so we're going to reduce the length of the jumper. The sleeves are far too long, and up here, which is the shoulder seam, this shoulder seam now is too wide, so we're going to reduce the shoulder seam as well. I was brought up in an era in the 70s and 80s where you didn't throw anything away. If it could be salvaged and make do amend, that's exactly what you did. And what we're going to do is to use the overlocker. However, I'm going to explain now what to do if you don't have an overlocking or a serging machine. Now, if you want to use a standard sewing machine, you'd need to use a machine that has a stretch stitch facility. And what happens is that the machine goes forward 2 stitches and back 1. It then goes forward another 2 stitches and back 1. And what that does, it enables the fabric to stretch with wear. If you used a basic straight stitch with knitwear or any jersey fabric, what will happen is that the seam can rip and everything comes undone. The stitch you see on the left here is a basic straight stretch stitch. That's fine to use, but you would then need to finish the raw edge off with the zigzag. Most basic machines that only go in a left and right direction with the zigzag will do a straight stretch stitch. Some more advanced machines will do special stretch stitches that actually sew the seam and finish the raw edge off as well. This one I think is probably the best because it actually gives a straight line on the raw edge. These two will be used for something like blankets or for applique work. The disadvantage, however, is that you would need, after you've sewn your seam, you would need to cut along the edge. So you sew your seam and then you cut as close to the finished edge as possible, like that. Now that's absolutely fine for cotton because what will happen here is there will be very little room for play when it comes to actually fraying the edge here. But for knitwear, you will still get quite a lot of fibre that's actually going to come away from the edge, which is why whenever you're altering knitwear or any jersey fabric, it's always best to use an overlocking machine because the looper actually brings the thread over the raw edge, totally enclosing it, which prevents any unraveling. So I need to reduce this jumper in total by 4 inches, and so what I've done, because obviously front and back is 2 inches and the other side would be the same, that totals 4. And I'm going to start at the bottom rib there, and we're going to go all the way up, and we're going to end at the cuff of the sleeve, which is there. Now I'm going to taper it off when I get there because the cuff width is actually still quite all right. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this on one sleeve only, and I'll do the other sleeve off camera. You don't need to see both sleeves, that's just repetitious, but the principle is the same. Now this alteration is also a very good idea if your tension swatch was actually a little bit off and your garment that you've knitted has come out far too large. You can use the same principles as well. So when you're sewing any knitwear fabrics, it's important that you have the differential feed setting at roughly at 1.5. There are many videos on YouTube that explain what differential feed is. I have gone into that when I've done other videos on knitwear fabrics, and I've got the stitch length here set at 2.5. So I'm using a 4-thread system here, and I've got 2 ballpoint needles in situ on this machine here, and what we're going to do is to keep the chalk mark in line with this particular mark here. This denotes the outside needle, the left-hand needle, because this is the one that's going to form the edge stitch, which is going to be the securing stitch. Now when you start sewing on an overlocker with any knitwear or jersey fabric, it's important to raise the overlocker foot there like that, rather than run the material under as you would do with a cotton non-stretch fabric, because if you don't, then as the machine grabs it, it will go out of place. So raise the foot and move it under as far as you can, and then the machine will catch it. And then just start sewing off, and then as the machine grabs it for the first few stitches, make sure that your fabric is aligned up, and then away you go. And make sure that your mark there is in line with your chalk mark, and then just go all the way down. Just keep everything aligned up. You don't need to go too fast, we're not having a race here. Now when you get to the underarm seam, you need to make sure that just by feel, and that's quite an easy thing to do, just by feel that the sleeve seams are aligned and matched. Make sure that they're flat as well. Round you go. And as we're coming towards the end, where the sleeve cuff is, remember that you need to follow your chalk line and taper out, because in this case the cuff still fits me. And that's that side. I'm going to do the other side off camera. So that's that done on both sides. As you can see, the edge is totally flat. There is no rippling effect here that you get sometimes when you are using a sewing machine or an overlocking machine that doesn't have differential feed, and that is because the setting was at 1.5. Now the next job is to shorten the sleeves, and we're going to do that at the cuff end. And what I'm going to do is to chalk that, and then we will move the cuff up. So I want the sleeves to be shortened by 2 inches, and what I've done, actually, I've only marked 1 inch from the edge of the rib here to this line here, and I'm going to show you why now. So what I've done is I actually folded along that chalk line, and the cuff, the ribbing, is on the inside here, and I put some clips around the edge. You can use pins if you want to, it's entirely up to you, or you can use some basting stitches. And what I'm going to do is put this under the overlocker and make sure that the left hand needle is precisely on the edge of this welt here. What I'm going to do is just move that in so you can see it. So as long as the edge of the left hand needle is exactly along this edge here, we will not be losing any of the rib, and this will be cut away, so therefore that is the 2 inches. So this is going to be removed, that side of the sleeve will be removed, and that will be the 2 inches taken off. So just to put that into a bit of context, this is the pearl side of the jumper, this is the wrong side of the sleeve, is that we're going to be turning this cuff to that side, and we're going to be marking and chalking along here. Now again, it's important that you don't run in when you're starting on the cuff. You actually lift the presser foot up and move it in as close as you can. So what you need to do, you need to go across at an angle in order to get this needle on the very edge of the rib here. And I'm going to show you that and show you where the alignment is. So we'll just start off, and you do this in small steps. Make sure that your seams are matching here. When you're starting any sewing in the round that has a seam involved, you always start at the edge of where the seam is. Okay, So we're right in position now, and what I'm going to do is just readjust the camera to show you exactly what I mean. So everything is aligned up, and what I'm demonstrating here is that this mark on the presser foot is exactly on the edge of where the rib is. And what this means is that this edge needle, this left edge needle, is going to be sewing on this exact edge here, and this part of the sleeve will be removed by the blade of the overlocker. So we need to remove these clips as we go along. And it's going to be done in small sections, of course. And keep going, and as I said earlier, you don't need to go at the speed of light. Here was where I ran the seam in so I could align everything up. So we go all the way round. And then we just come off. And then we'll do the other cuff in exactly the same way. So this jumper needs to be shortened by 4 inches. So what I've done is I've turned up and left a 2-inch margin between the edge of the rib here and the fold line, because as with the case with the sleeves, that will actually encounter and give you the total amount of 4 inches when this is cut away. And just as before, we need to make sure that the needle, the left needle, is precisely along the line of this top edge of the rib. So just as we did before, we're going to come in at the angle and make sure that that marker on the presser foot is exactly along the line of the top edge of the rib. And away we go. And we keep going all the way round, making sure that the fold is the same distance from the edge of the rib to the top of the fold line. And we're just coming up to the very end now, and we just keep going. And that's that. So the last alteration to do is the sleeve cap, and I'm going to take 1 inch off of the actual sleeve itself and 1 inch off the garment body. And what that entails is to put a mark where the sleeve cap starts, and then you fold it in half where the shoulder seam is here. I've then drawn a chalk line 1 inch in from the top of the sleeve, and we're going to align that up with the same marking on the presser foot on the overlocker. So again, you raise the presser foot up and bring the edge of the sleeve cap underneath the foot, and that marker on the presser foot, you want to start 1, perhaps 2 inches beyond the edge of the sleeve cap there, because you want the first stitches to start directly on there as you run in. So let's get going. And again, we can take this slowly. And you keep going all the way round. And the other sleeve gets done in exactly the same way. So here is the finished alteration. The caps of the sleeve are now much more smooth, they now measure correctly and they're no longer out of shape. The bottom of the rib is perfect, as is the cuffs here, and everything now measures properly. This alteration is a very simple alteration to do at home, however in the dry cleaners it would have cost a fortune.